I will be talking about the United Nations today and just sort of its overall structure. The allies of World War II joined together after defeating the Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan, and they gathered under the influence of President Truman, who was really seeking a way to have continued world peace. The world was in shock after World War I and World War II, and this was a time when people were desperate for peace and tired of war. So President Truman created this organization, and it has now continued for 60 years. There has been much argument whether or not the UN has succeeded in its many goals and missions, but it also helps to just look at its structure and see sort of what it's doing. The first part about the UN that's important to understand is its Declaration of Human Rights. This is an important thing that they've done in defining human rights in their own way. They've sort of taken the issues of the day and gathered them all into this definition. So they include creating rights for children, especially in terms of labor laws, also rights for women, and they outlaw apartheid, torture, and racial discrimination all in this definition. They also state that all human beings are born free and equal, and that we need to seek to act towards each other in a spirit of brotherhood. The wording of this definition was crafted very carefully by the UN, and it will probably change as the issues change that we will see in the future. I gathered this information from the UN's website, UN News Center, and it was very helpful if you would also like to look at that. Now, another part of managing human rights that the UN is involved in was creating the UN Security Council. The Security Council has 5 permanent seats, which include the United States, England, China, Russia, and France. And those seats are always there to sort of vote on what the UN Security Council is going to do. What is special about this council is that they actually have the power to use military force, which is not seen anywhere else in the UN. And they get the troops through these different countries that are involved in this organization seeking world peace. Now, this is probably the most controversial part of the UN because a lot of people will say that the UN hasn't used these troops well, they haven't been effective, others think they have, so there's a lot of controversy in that issue. But the UN Security Council continually seeks to maintain and establish peace, which is their overarching goal. And one example of what many see as a success for the UN Security Council was when Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1991, and they sent troops in to sort of reestablish peace in that area. This power that they have to send in troops is given to them by Chapter 7, which is rarely used and hopefully used very wisely. Another part of the UN is the Secretary General. He is sort of the spokesperson of the UN, and if you sort of looked at the UN as its own private little country, the Secretary General would be sort of an ambassador to the rest of the world from the UN, stating what its purpose is and how it wants to seek those goals. The Secretary General is mainly seen as a political figure, and some question whether he has really any power. Others say he does have power. Another part of the UN is the different organizations that have come out of this larger organization. There are thousands of organizations that I could talk about, but 3 of the most important ones that I researched was included the UN Human Rights Commission, and they sort of just seek to create a consensus among countries about human rights and defining those rights and what they believe are rights, because that can be very controversial. There's also the International Labor Organization, which has had huge effects in creating child labor laws. We've especially seen these effects in the United States in recent history. And another organization is the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. This organization deals with 13 to 15 million refugees a year, and they operate on a very low budget. So looking at these different organizations, we can see some of the effects the UN has had and maybe some of the ways in which it could have failed its initial purpose. This is a very complex organization to analyze, and really, if you could spend years talking about it and sort of trying to figure out what it's doing and how it could do things better, but I think it does help to look at sort of the overall outline of what its duties are and what its organizations are doing. And it's very hard to say what its overall effect has been, but it's definitely an amazing thing that it's lasted so long. And I think President Truman would probably be very happy about that.